See, that was off. That's cool. There we go. We'll fix that. Take this and move this like this. We like that right there. Just like that. A little bit lower. There we go. Great. This .78, that is Matic. Hey, Steve, what's up? Cool. Matic's at 78. Steve, let's turn on the chat. Shall we? Okay, chat's on. Great. Good morning, everybody. Let's read.
Nick Brown.
Hey, Nick.
Top of the morning to YA.
What's up, buddy? There we go. Get everything straightened up here. Just the way we like it. So let's just tell a little story. Here in Florida, since I moved here, I've been reading the newspaper articles, and I've seen that Ron DeSantis has relentlessly gone after the trans community here with legislation. Okay, he votes.
Sean, aka Trendy Orca.
Hey, Sean.
Morning nay, still home with strep throat.
He ignores the votes of the people. He takes their elected officials out of office, and then he installs his own hand-picked replacements that go along with his line of thinking. And his line of thinking is, let's go after the trans community. And you might be like, why is Ron DeSantis going after the trans community? The Nazis went after the trans community. This is how they get you in. Okay? They go after a marginalized group. They try to get as many people on board as they can, and they build strength. Don't tack on with Ron DeSantis because you might agree with his stance on the trans community. What you need to do is just not worry about the trans community so much. All right? And you need to not be supporting Ron DeSantis. What he is doing is he's literally going after the books, right, that might say something about trans kids or whatever, burning the books, right? Getting them out of the schools. Guess what the Nazis did? They started with the trans community, and the first books they burned were science books trying to, to study trans people.
Stephen Running. Civil rights case.
So understand that when you support Ron DeSantis, you literally are a Nazi. That's what you are. You're a Nazi because he's a Nazi, and you guys can't see it yet, but you're going to see it. You're going to see it. Of course, me,
Francesco Morrow.
I'm always ahead of everybody.
Hi, everyone.
I'm always in front of the whole narrative. No matter what you're going to hear it from me first because I have no fear. And I'm sure a lot of other people can see this, but people like Jimmy Dore are scared. They don't want to lose all their right-wing supporters. If you're a right-wing supporter and you support Ron DeSantis, I don't want you watching my show. I'd rather have one person here listening to me that agrees with me than 9 people that are on the fence. Seriously. I just don't want to hang out with you. I don't want to entertain you. I don't want to bring you joy. You know, people are like, hey, man, don't you want to try to convince people? Don't you want to try to win people over? No, I'm done with that. It's not my job. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. If you're like that and you think that way, just leave. Go support Ron DeSantis. You're a Nazi, and I hate you.
I agree with you, Nay, totally.
Thank you, Sean. Good. I'm glad you agree with me, man. Thank you so much for that. That's nice. I hope the rest of you agree with me too. Love to hear from you in the chat. And if you think that maybe I make this up, do you think that I just came up with this on my own, and you guys are like scratching your heads like, yeah, well, what's your source, Nay? I mean,
Brock all day. Good morning.
Hey, bro.
Josh G. Good morning, Nay.
Is being anti-trans, but you can point out that anti-trans sentiment seems to lead to fascist ideology and has a lot of fascist support, and that the first book burning by the Nazis was the destruction of
There it is. So let me just pull this
Brock
up.
all day. So sad today. We lost Ken Block yesterday.
I don't know who that is, though. I don't know what you're talking about. All right, here we go. Okay, this is where this comes from, and you'll see his source.
Of the definition of fascism is being anti-trans, but you can point out that anti-trans sentiment seems to lead to fascist ideology and has a lot of fascist support, and that the first book burning by the Nazis was the destruction of research on transsexualism.
See that? The first book burning by the Nazis was on research done on transsexualism. That's exactly what Ron DeSantis is doing. He's going after the trans community in the exact same way that Adolf Hitler and the Nazis started, by going after the trans community. First they came for the trans community, and I said nothing. Oh, no, that's right. You watch Nay's Garden, and we do say something here. We do say so. We're saying it right now. And now, social media only wants 7 of you and 3 of you, of course, to hear this message, which is probably the most important message you're going to hear on the internet today, guaranteed. And, luckily he gets a lot more viewers than me, but unfortunately,
Ryan Green.
he glosses over it really fast.
You have to be kidding, right?
I'm not the one who said it. He said it. You got a problem, talk to Cody Johnstone, bro. He's the one that said it. Did you not think that the Nazis burned transsexual scientific literature first? Is that what you think I'm kidding about? Or do you think I'm kidding about the fact that Ron DeSantis is going after the trans community by writing legislation and burning their books here in the state of Florida? Which is it, Ryan Green? Which is it exactly that you disagree with? I'm just kind of curious. Let me know. I'll sip my coffee and pack my bong while you figure out what you're trying to say. We'll see, anybody tries to come up against me on actual facts. These aren't debatable, provable facts. I mean, I'll just produce the facts for you. I'll show you the legislation. I'll explain it to you. We'll talk about how he's going after...
Ryan Green. Okay, give me a
Bro,
minute to
I'll give
answer.
you all day. I broadcast 3 times a day. You come in here, you write up what you think is going to convince me of your side of this stupid freaking way of viewing at it, and write it down and put it in a paragraph and polish it up and edit it and then bring it in and take all the time you need, bro. Me, I know how I feel and I can express it instantly. I don't have to take my time or whatever. I know exactly how I feel about stuff. I can just spit it out right now. I'm ready to go right now. But you take your time, that's fine. I do this 3 times a day, every day.
Lisa Fernie.
I got a little experience,
Nay.
with responding to my belief system. And this
Ryan Green.
This is, oh yeah, absolutely,
Thank
Ryan.
you.
And this is going to be an easy takedown of you. Just so you know, I'm telling you ahead of time. It's like when 2 fighters, like the day before a match, they have to go toe-to-toe, and they do the weigh-in. You and I are doing the weigh-in right now, and I'm staring you down, and I'm like, you ain't going to get shit on me, bro. That's me right now. I'm staring you down. I'm like, you ain't going to get shit on me, bro. Because I've got all my eggs already in the basket. I've got everything already ready to go. So, there's really not much you're going to be able to say to defend Ron DeSantis. But I can't believe somebody came in here to defend Ron DeSantis. Whenever you basically compare him to the Nazis for doing exactly what the Nazis did. But, should I pull up my ammunition right now? I think I will. We'll bring up the don't say gay law, and we'll bring up the books that are being banned, and we could also talk about the way he goes after trans, what are those called, drag shows, and claims that they're directed at children and whatever. We could talk all about that too. You know, these drag shows that have been going on, you know, since I was a baby. And all of a sudden, they're dangerous for our children. You know, we could talk about that. We could talk about him gerrymandering African Americans out of their votes in South Florida, passing legislation to do that. We could talk about him removing an elected state attorney from his position because the guy wouldn't prosecute women who had abortions. You support that too? Boy, this is going to be fun. I'll go ahead and I'll start pulling up some of the information. What is this? Trending now. What are these weird windows popping up here? Trending now. This is NBC News I'm going to pull up. This is because it's the
Stephen
first...
running.
No.
Call a debate.
No, it's not a debate. It's me going to show him some facts and show him that I'm right and to prove that he's wrong and that he's supporting a fucking Nazi. There's no debate. This is not a debate. This is me already knowing that I'm right, me knowing that he's wrong, me knowing that I'm on the side of good and knowing that he's on the side of evil. There's no debate. Everybody that's watching this already knows that I'm right.
Ryan Green. I'm not going to try to take you down by any means. I don't believe that you can compare anyone to the Nazis.
I just
Hitler.
did. I just did.
I have kids that are gay, and I'm not here to fight you on trans community either.
Excellent. Excellent. No. You can compare people to Nazis. And for you to think that you can't compare someone to a Nazi proves that you aren't even able to have a legitimate conversation around this. You don't get to dictate your set of facts before a fucking conversation, bro. And I got news for you. Just because you lie and say, you know, you don't believe that you could compare anyone to the Nazis, I say, well, it happens all the time. So I just proved you wrong. People compare people to Nazis all the time. Vladimir Putin has been compared to Nazis. The Ukrainians have been compared to Nazis. You know, when the Ukrainians salute with a Nazi salute, they get compared to Nazis. When Ukrainians torture people in the street, they get compared to Nazis. When Ukrainians bombed, 14,000 ethnic Russians out of their homes, they got compared to Nazis. And when anybody calls himself a white supremacist, they get compared to a Nazi. And when anybody calls himself a Nazi, they get compared to a Nazi. Nick Fuentes gets compared to being a Nazi. Donald Trump gets compared to being a Nazi. Ron DeSantis gets compared to being a Nazi. I don't understand how you think you can dictate this. It's literally a fact that people get compared to being Nazis all the time. And if we're talking about when the Nazi Party first started, they just did one thing. They burned a book. Well, guess what? That's where Ron DeSantis is starting. He's burning a book. And guess what the subject was that the Nazis decided to burn? Oh, it was trans people. Well, guess what the subject is in the books that Ron has removed from schools? Trans stuff. And like I said, we're just getting started, man. I'm going to prove you wrong on every point. And the fact that you come in here and you say that you have kids that are gay and you support Ron DeSantis means that you are a fucking cunt motherfucker. You are a dumb cunt motherfucker. And I can go ahead and say that because you are a piece of fucking human garbage. And I'm going to go ahead and say that because of what you just said to me. You said you're here to support Ron DeSantis and not compare him to a Nazi, and you got gay children. You're fucking full of shame, and how dare you? And I mean that, I usually say that joking around, and I mean how dare you in every sense of the meaning of that term. How fucking dare you? You have a gay child. Man, I wish they were here right now to see what a fucking cuck bitch their father is. Holy shit. In fact, I bet you're the reason your children are gay. Wouldn't even be surprised. Boy, I've said a lot, haven't I? based off of you saying that people can't be compared to Nazis, and based off of you just saying that you're a father here to argue for Ron DeSantis, and you have gay children. Wow. You basically already lost, bro. I mean, does anybody want to try to defend him? I haven't even let him speak yet. Does anybody want to try to defend him? At all? I'll wait. Like I said, I'll pack my bong and wait. It's happened rather quickly. I wasn't expecting it to happen that fast, but... What's going on? Are we good? You guys want to hear Cody say it again? Here, let's do it again.
And has a lot of fascist support, and that the first book burning by the Nazis was the destruction of research on transsexualism. Fascism tends to have a charismatic, strongman leader to coalesce.
See, it's sad because he just says it for 1 second and moves on. It's just so sad. He says it and moves on, but it's there, and that's the fact. So I'm still trying to, you said... You haven't said anything yet, have you? You said, I have to be kidding. I have to be kidding about what? That I'm comparing Ron DeSantis to the Nazis? Is that it? I'm comparing Ron DeSantis to the Nazis because he's doing something the Nazis did. How is that an unfair comparison? It's not just something they did. It's not like, wearing an armband or something like that. No, it's one of the most horrible things they did when they started out. Was they went after the trans community by burning a book, by burning information. That's what Ron DeSantis does right now. How is that uncomparable? Oh, that's right. It's completely comparable. And not a single person is sticking up for you in my chat. Now, let me ask you guys this. If I know, because it's hard for you guys, so just give me a 1 if you feel like it's okay to compare Ron DeSantis to Nazis, based on everything I've said so far. Give me a 1 in the chat if you feel like it's okay for me to compare Ron DeSantis to fucking Nazis, based on what I've said in this show so far. Steve Running gave me a 1. Thank you, Steve.
1.
Thank you. Anybody else? Is it okay for me to compare Ron DeSantis to a Nazi based on the fact that he did exactly what the Nazis did? Do you want me to pull up the article of Ron DeSantis getting rid of books in the Florida school system?
Trendy Nick.
Or do we need to? Do I need to show you that, or are we good? Nick, thank you, buddy. 2 people gave me a 1. So it's okay for me.
Doc Hollandaisy.
Doc Hollandaisy, hello.
1.
I got a 1 from Doc Hollandaisy. So it's okay for me to compare
Ryan Green.
Ron DeSantis
LOL.
to the Nazis. Second point. Okay, so I've won that point. Second point, Ryan. You're a father with gay children. Why are you defending somebody who hates your children? Huh. He fucking hates your children. He doesn't want your gay kids sitting in a school next to his heterosexual kids.
Josh G. 1.
And you better hope one of those kids isn't a
Ryan
transsexual.
Green. You are not going to get anyone to care about your hate.
Dude, they all just agreed with me. What are you talking? Josh G, thank you for the 1. They're all agreeing with me. What are you talking about? Okay. Let me give you the benefit of the doubt. Look, everybody in the chat
Ryan Green.
that agrees
LOL.
that it's unfair to compare Ron DeSantis to the Nazis based on what has been said in this chat so far. Give me a 9. Give me a 9 if you think it's unfair to compare Ron DeSantis to the Nazis. There, I said it fair for you, Ryan. We'll see how many 9s you can get in the chat. I have a feeling it's going to be the German definition of the word 9. None. I'm guessing here. Let's see how many 9s you can get. I'll keep packing my bong. I mean, we're going to have to go point for point. And like I said, it's not a debate. It's just me being right, you being wrong, and me just showing everybody that I'm right. That's all. It's not a debate. There's no question in my mind of where I stand or where the facts are on any of this. So I'm not here to debate. I'm here to make you look like a fool. And, the fact that you're here defending Ron DeSantis and you claim that you have gay children, you've already done it yourself. You've already made yourself look like a fool. What kind of a father supports a leader that hates your children. What kind of a father does that make you? There's plenty of other leaders out there you could support. Didn't have to be the one who hates your kids based on their gender or their sexuality. Ryan Green, are you African American? I just got a closer look at your avatar. You're African American and you're defending Ron DeSantis? Bro, do you know what he did to the African American vote in South Florida? Or are you not aware of that? It's called gerrymandering, bro. He doesn't think that African Americans deserve representation. Is that okay with you? Does that sound Nazi-esque to you too? Trying to control the vote? Trying to control people's speech? This is really interesting, Ryan. You're a so far no 9s for you, buddy. Not a single 9. You notice that? I'll say it again. Look, guys, if you think that it's okay to compare Ron DeSantis to Nazis, give me a 1, because he acts like a fucking Nazi. If you don't think it's okay to compare Ron DeSantis to Nazis because Nazis were so horrible and they gassed the Jews, you know, and Ron DeSantis never gassed the Jews. So if you don't think, because based on that, it's not okay to compare him to the Nazis, then go ahead and give me a 9 in the chat. 1 if you agree with me, 9 if you agree with the guy that's siding with a Nazi guy that hates his kids.
Stephen running. Crickets.
Nothing but 1s all day, bro. So I know it's a lopsided audience in here, for the most part. But you'd be surprised how many people watch this show that fucking hate me. And none of them have the balls to put a 9 in the chat. Even the little troll cunts don't. So, I'm not here to convince you. I'm just here to tell you you're a horrible person. I feel sorry for your children. Their father's a piece of fucking human garbage. You're a race traitor, right? Based on the color of your skin at least, you seem to not give a shit about African Americans, and you don't give a shit about LGBTQ community, and you seem to think that someone like Ron DeSantis, who literally stood in front of men that were being tortured and told them he was there to help them and made sure to ratchet up the torture on those guys, should be a leader for you or for anybody, is a fucking joke. You, Ryan Green, you are a fucking joke. Understand that. You're a joke. And if you're being honest about you having gay kids or whatever, trying to win an argument, it's not going to help your argument. If anything, it made you look worse. And still, you're not blocked. I've been giving you all the time you want to say whatever you want in my chat. You've chosen to not say anything, really. So I just want to thank everybody that gave me a 1. Josh G, appreciate you, bro. Doc Hollandaisy, appreciate you, bro. Trendy Nick, appreciate you, bro. Steven Running, appreciate you, bro. All of you, thank you for giving me a 1. It didn't take much, did it? I mean, if you agree with what I say and you want me to keep saying what I say, then agree with me in the chat when I ask you to agree with me. You know? Show me some fucking support. So, I wonder if Some More News has anything on Ron DeSantis. That would probably be an interesting watch.
Josh G. 1. People who think like Ryan believe the comparison has to be 100% exact. I see your point the moment you started.
Hey, dude, I'm going to compare myself to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Look at these. Hey, look at this. Like I could do that, right? But I could if I want to compare myself to this lighter. It's bright, and it provides warmth. Hey, I could compare myself or anything to anything. You could compare anything to anything. You compare anyone to anyone. You know, and maybe the comparison is weak, maybe it's strong. In this case with Ron DeSantis, I think we've got a pretty good point here that both the Nazis and Ron DeSantis are going after the trans community first. I think that's a very good point, and I think everyone should take note of that. It's just kind of coincidental, isn't it? It's kind of coincidental. I guarantee you it's not coincidental at all. I wouldn't be surprised if he's taking notes from the Nazis. He's studying the fucking Nazis. This is how you get people, that hate to get on your team. Now, this is what the Nazis did, and it worked for them. All right. Ron DeSantis. Okay. Yes. Yes. Here we go. That's a year ago, but this is 7 months ago. Yeah, this is very important. This is perfect. This is perfect.
Hey, you folk! Here's some news. Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis fucking hate queer people. Goodbye.
Do you guys like that? Do you guys like that? That's it. Ron DeSantis hates you if you're LGBTQ. I'm not the only one saying it. Nazis hated you if you were LGBTQ too. Wow, there's a comparison to be drawn there, isn't there? Huh. Wow, I'm just destroying you, bro, aren't I? And, it's so funny, you just pussed off. You're not even going to talk in my chat anymore. Whatever.
I'm just tickling your nuts. There is more video. We have fun here. We have fun here. I mean, except when we talk about crime or the IRS or racism or war, or in this episode, a horrendous removal of human rights that's being currently attempted by the GOP, who, as I said, sure seem to fucking hate queer people. In fact, we can just go ahead and make that the title of the episode.
Dude, I love this show so much. They're just so good. It's funny, but at the same time, it's serious shit, not to be taken lightly. And, it's if you're going to take your serious shit with a little spoonful of sugar, it helps the medicine go down. It does. And he's very informative. The problem is like I said before, he'll gloss over points because he just assumes his audience is very bright. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss a lot of information. So this is the kind of thing that you really want to pay attention to. Every word. Listen to what he's saying because he goes fast. At the same time, he's great at exposing people for what they are. Cheers. No law regarding cannabis.
Good title.
Clean glass.
Strong, direct, lots of E's and O's. Or shoot, maybe it's more complicated than saying the entire GOP hates queer people, but also counterpoint. Maybe it isn't. Maybe there's some conservative people out there who claim to be cool with the L's and G's and B's and T's, but if those people still support and vote for the GOP, then guess what? And if you don't think the GOP is launching a serious attack against the rights of the queer community, then double guess what? They super are. Most notably, on March 11th, a Texas judge temporarily halted statewide investigations of parents with transgender children. This was after Texas Governor Greg Abbott ordered state officials to consider gender-affirming health care for trans youth, care like puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy, as child abuse. The judge in question, Amy Clark Meacham, ruled that Abbott's actions were unconstitutional due to the order violating the separation of powers by impermissibly encroaching into the legislative domain. So while this ruling is unquestionably good, it's more about whether or not Abbott himself has the authority to pass legislation like this than it is any kind of official verdict on the legitimacy of trans health care. It's like issuing a health code violation on a deli serving human meat. And of course, this ruling is already being challenged. So it's still good for the moment, but also an extremely minor victory on a much larger and more horrifying scale. Like a deli scale, built to weigh human meat. You see, despite this one order being overturned, this move is just a small part of a much larger wave of anti-trans and LGBTQ legislation sweeping across America right now. Remember that wave from Deep Impact that killed Tasha Yar? It's exactly like that, but evil. Like that evil goo in Star Trek. that also killed Tasha Yar. In 2022 alone, nearly 240 anti-LGBTQ bills have killed Tasha Yar. Sorry, rule of threes had to do it, okay. In 2022 alone, nearly 240 anti-LGBTQ bills have been proposed by state legislators so far, a huge increase from the 41 similar bills filed in 2018, and up as well from the 191 bills proposed in all of last year. A number that was so large that it had prompted some advocates to label 2021 as the worst year in recent history for queer rights. And now this year is significantly worse only 4 months in. That'll show those advocates, aha, take that! Because if the 2020s taught us anything, it's that everything can always get significantly worse if you just, wait a minute. Anyway, a great deal of these bills are wrapped in the disguise of protecting religious rights, specifically the right to discriminate against other people, effectively declaring religious rights to have priority over LGBTQ rights. In several states, we're seeing bills allowing people to deny adoption to same-sex couples. Kentucky is trying to allow government officials to refuse to acknowledge gay marriage based on their beliefs, despite being, government officials. And a handful of states are dabbling with the idea that healthcare professionals should have the right to refuse treating people based on their personal beliefs, which is just so incredibly vague and weird that it could be used to discriminate against literally anyone. And in Tennessee, they passed a law effectively forcing businesses to have a trigger warning on their doors if they happen to have co-ed toilets for, I guess, any snowflake who doesn't understand the concept of family bathrooms. Tennessee also tried and failed to pass a bill that would, quote, prohibit officials from creating, enforcing, or endorsing policies that respect or promote non-secular, self-asserted, sex-based identity narratives. And I have no fucking clue what that is supposed to mean. It's like the cloud atlas of laws. Most of these bills are so ridiculously vague and weird that they appear to ban everything and nothing, which we will certainly talk about.
Tony Z on the Rumble.
But almost half of the bills put forward this year specifically target transgender people, with a large chunk of those prioritizing, or at least claiming to prioritize, the health and well-being of trans children. So today, we're gonna talk about all of these bills, what they're trying to do, about how and why they're being proposed at such a high velocity all of a sudden. Also, we might reference Cloud Atlas at least once more, maybe Jupiter ascending. We'll see how we feel. And let's start, if we have to, with the currently blocked Texas bill, which is technically the least bummer story in that it hasn't happened yet. So that's good? Sure. Okay, so the Texas order that Governor Abbott is still fighting to enact would call on both licensed professionals and members of the general public to report parents of transgender children as child abusers if those children had received gender-affirming care. Not only that, but the order came as part of a letter from Abbott to the Department of Family and Protective Services, in which he asked the department to conduct a prompt and thorough investigation into the families of any minors undergoing elective procedures for transition. Now, we've already done a whole episode on the way anti-trans advocates use the "what about the children" narrative to obfuscate their puritanical conservative attitudes towards gender and sexuality, and we would probably make a whole other video about other ways that transphobic ideology is wrong and bad. In fact,
we did.
Make more videos. All right.
More
but
videos.
It bears worth repeating here. Puberty blockers are broadly reversible and cause no meaningful harm. What's more, gender-affirming care, including puberty blockers as well as hormone replacement therapy and gender confirmation surgery, is shown to noticeably improve quality of life and decrease depression and suicidal ideation in trans adolescents. And and
he glosses over this so fast, and it's so important what you just heard him say. And I just really hope that everybody out there heard what he said. And if you didn't, maybe if you listen to me, from me, you'll hear it. What he said is all of these medical procedures that are available to trans kids today help them. For the most part, these kids benefit from these procedures. It stops them from killing themselves. This is a good thing. Okay? Ron DeSantis wants to do away with all this. He wants to make sure that's not available with your insurance. Doesn't want your insurance to pay for it. He's citing all of these studies that show that this is a good thing, and this is the way it's been because it's a good thing. And now Ron DeSantis is coming along, and he wants to get rid of all this. Now, he glosses over it so fast that you don't even catch it. So once again, I want you to hear him say, that all of these procedures that he's talking about prevent suicide. Okay? It's important.
Into the families of any minors undergoing elective procedures for transition. Now, we've already done a whole episode on the way anti-trans advocates use the "what about the children" narrative to obfuscate their puritanical conservative attitudes towards gender and sexuality, and we would probably make a whole other video about other ways that transphobic ideology is wrong and bad. In fact,
make videos.
More videos. All right, but it bears worth repeating here.
Here it is.
Puberty blockers are broadly reversible and cause no meaningful harm. What's more, gender-affirming care, including puberty blockers as well as hormone replacement therapy and gender confirmation surgery, is shown to noticeably improve quality of life and decrease depression and suicidal ideation in trans adolescents. And most importantly, being transgender isn't a problem we need to prevent or fix, and parents trying to affirm their children's identity aren't being abusive, Greg, you fucking Gumby.
Okay, I know he's hilarious. Did you guys catch all that? I really hope you did. It's so important. This is basically just, you need to understand what a monster Ron DeSantis is. You don't need to understand trans kids, trans people. You don't need to understand that. You don't need to worry about drag shows. You don't need to worry about LGBTQ parades, communities, and events, and bars, and any of that. The only thing that you need to know is that the Nazis went after these people. That's what you need to know. Do you want to be like the Nazis? If you walk away with anything from this, that should be it. Don't be distracted by everything else. You don't need to know about all that stuff. If it's something you're interested in, something you want to learn about, whatever, hey man, I totally support you in learning about it, in understanding what these people are going through. You know, you're going to want to support them more. You're not going to want to hurt them. And unfortunately, Ron DeSantis doesn't have time to understand, people that are different from him.
According to the failing New York Times, Abbott's order managed to sow chaos and confusion amongst trans families and their medical providers before it was temporarily halted. Dr. Megan Mooney, a licensed psychologist whose clients include transgender children, as well as a plaintiff in the case to halt the order, testified to there being outright panic as the order caused children and their families to fear for their safety and forced medical professionals to choose between their legal duties and moral obligations. One mother, an employee of Texas's Family Protection Agency, who showed up to court in goddamn disguise, testified to being terrified for her trans daughter's health and well-being. And Rio Grande Valley resident Adamalis Vigil told the Texas Tribune that her 13-year-old trans daughter, Adeline, is so terrified she will be forcibly separated from her mother that she doesn't even want to sleep in her own bed. Because in Texas, being found guilty of child abuse can come with a first-degree felony conviction and up to 100 years in prison and/or a fine of $10,000, which seems pretty problematic when you start defining child abuse as stuff I don't like. In
other words, if you're going to say that, getting gender altering therapy or hormone blockers or anything for your child is child abuse, and you're going to call it child abuse, these people will go to prison as a child abuser. Imagine that. Imagine that.
It's bad. Yeah, it says it right here. It's bad. Not to mention, of course,
and this guy came in here earlier and said that he wants to support Ron DeSantis, and at the same time, he said he's got gay children, right?
That it also means having your child taken away from you by the state and presumably prevented from
All I'm saying is,
the
what if one of his children was trans instead of just, gay is just trans? Then what? You still love them? You still love your kids? You still support Ron DeSantis?
often life-saving processes of hormone replacement therapy and gender confirmation surgeries. And so when this potential law causes a wave of panic and fear from the people it claims to protect, you kind of have to wonder if it's perhaps not at all actually a law designed to protect those people. Maybe it's a bad shitty law aimed at pleasing a base of voters who simply don't like transgender people, all at the expense of kids and parents who just want to live their lives.
Well, you would notice I have 3 thriving children. The issues we're facing right now are not things that we have to deal with on a regular basis. My daughter is, she loves riding her bike, she loves swimming, she loves hanging out with her friends, playing Pokemon Go, all the things that you would expect from a 12-year-old who's happy And you'll have to forgive me because it's pretty hard for me to talk about this without tearing up because it's just been such an awful couple of weeks.
Can you imagine being a parent suddenly told by the state that you might have your happy and healthy kids taken away from you because a group of politicians decided that your existence is wrong and bad? It's honestly Sisypheanly hard to express just how intentionally cruel and dishonest this ongoing conservative attempt to f over trans kids and their families is. But of
I wish that more people would be here to watch this, but I want to say this to all of you that are choosing to listen to this. I want to say you are the best people on the planet. If you are here, you're listening to this, I want to say thank you so much. I really do appreciate you guys. It's not the easiest thing to listen to. I understand that.
Here at Cody's Shody, we love nothing more than pushing huge rocks up various hills and inclines, as well as talking about the hit film Jupiter Ascending, out now in 2015. On top of everything we've already mentioned, Abbott's order was prompted by a non-binding legal opinion from Attorney General Ken Paxton, released only a few days earlier, in which Paxton argued that gender-affirming care constitutes child abuse. The opinion is, unsurprisingly, full of shit. Not only does Paxton claim that care widely accepted by leading healthcare groups like puberty blockers are abusive, but he also cites as examples things like body modification surgery, a process which is rarely, if ever, performed on children. Paxton's opinion statement has been criticized alongside Abbott's directive by various medical and human rights organizations, including the Endocrine Society, an international medical organization for the field of endocrinology, which said the conservative argument rejects evidence-based transgender medical care. But of course, this isn't about evidence, nor is it about actually getting these laws through. By doing this, they are sending a signal to both their base, but especially to parents of trans kids, that by allowing your child to pursue their own personal happiness, the government is going to make their lives as hard as possible. Because the GOP loves interfering with the lives of families, right? It's like their motto says, tread on me harder, big government, P.S. we hate families. Seems long, but, that's the grand old party we know and tolerate. See, while Paxton's statement was non-binding and Abbott's order is currently blocked, that doesn't mean their words don't have weight and impact when they come from important elected
2 minutes
officials.
Late.
And
no
like we said before,
candidates,
Abbott's
everybody
order
cheers.
was only blocked on the grounds that it was an overreach of the executive branch, not on the grounds that it was evil and dishonest, because apparently morality is subjective and a functioning democratic system can't base its legislative process on how good or evil a law is because that's just not how it works, or something. I don't know. I refuse to read a book. Or can't read, except for the teleprompter, which reads, "The point is, while it kicks absolute ass that Judge Meacham told Abbott to shut the f*** up, you awful piece of shit, all it would take to actually pass legislation that does the same thing as Abbott's order would be for enough Texas legislators to believe the same hateful lies that Abbott and Paxton believe. And unfortunately, the only way to stop that from happening is to use that same legislative system to pass bills that explicitly protect trans people and permanently enshrine their rights into law. So, phew, good thing the legislative processes in this country are simple and fast-acting. Right? Right. Okay. Moving on from the good news. How is the good news? Jesus frogs. All right. Well, here's some worse news. On March 28th, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, yuck, 0 stars, signed into law Bill HB 1557, Parental Rights in Education Act, or as virtually everyone has decided to call it, the Don't Say Gay Bill. In its preamble, HB 1557 claims that one of its goals is to prohibit classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in certain grade levels or in a specified manner. The precise wording in the law later states, again, exact quote, classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. The bill goes on to give parents the ability to sue a school district if they believe this law has been violated, stating, if a concern is not resolved by the school district, a parent may bring an action against the school district to obtain a declaratory judgment that the school district procedure or practice violates this paragraph and seek injunctive relief. A court may award damages and shall award reasonable attorney fees and court costs to a parent who receives declaratory or injunctive relief. I want to be crystal clear with the text of this law, because one of the extremely baby-brained responses from the right has been to either smugly declare that the bill doesn't literally say the word gay, or to simply deny the bill is aimed at teachers talking about being gay. Some have pointed out that while they use the word discussion in the preamble, the law itself swaps that for instruction, as if that somehow makes it better. However, as one law expert pointed out, courts will often look at the preamble of a law to help them interpret the enforcement of it. Not to mention the extremely broad wording in all of this. Does it count as instruction for a teacher to explain what a same-sex marriage is? That's technically instructing kids how to get gay married. And did you notice that this prohibits teachers from instructions for kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards? And again, as legal experts have pointed out, this law doesn't list what those state standards are, nor what counts as age appropriate. It's vague and weird and seems to leave it up to the parents to decide. And if you have a parent like, I don't know, black conservative Ben Shapiro, who accused body bags Mark Hamill of indoctrinating children by simply spamming the word gay over and over again, well then things get a bit subjective. This doesn't mean that a parent would win a legal battle, but much like Texas's anyone can sue someone for getting an abortion or driving someone to get an abortion law, it's clearly designed to gunk up the system. Because even if a parent's complaint is unwarranted and ultimately loses, it creates a climate where schools and teachers won't want to risk triggering an intentionally vague law for snowflakes that would damage reputations and careers. Just like that Texas trans law, it's designed to send a message to certain people that by supporting LGBTQ kids, they are going to make their lives very difficult.
And the opposite of that is it's also a dog whistle for their base, because there are people that love this shit. But I get what he's saying.
And thanks to the colossal vagueness of it all, the supporters have the added bonus of standing back and acting like supreme logic kings, pretending that their bill is actually not exactly what it seems like.
I'm asking you to tell me what's in the bill, because you are pushing false narratives. It doesn't matter what critics say.
Well, it says it bans classroom instruction on sexual identity and gender orientation.
For who? For grades pre-K through 3. So 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. And the idea that you wouldn't be honest about that and tell people what it actually says, it's why people don't trust people like you, because you peddle false narratives. And so we disabuse you of those narratives. And we're going to make sure that parents are able to send their kid to kindergarten without having some of this stuff injected into their school curriculum.
Checkmate, libs! We sunk your battleship! Uno! Cloud Atlas! Hey, Ron, when you say stuff injected into curriculums, just what are you talking about exactly? If it's not trying to ban teachers from saying gay, what is it trying to ban then? Well, let's dig into that. After a few ads, we love ads just like we love you. And so to deny these ads, you're also denying our love for you. So think about that for a second while these ads play.
There's the ad. You're welcome.
Did you feel our love for you in those ads? Good. That's the only reason why we played those ads. And if you recall, we were talking about the infamous Florida Don't Say Gay bill, and how the GOP is claiming that the bill actually has nothing to do with an obvious attempt to limit the rights of LGBTQ students and teachers. One of the most common conservative talking points from the likes of the Daily Wire is that the evil left-wing mainstream media is wildly misinterpreting the nature of the bill on purpose in order to push their insidious gender ideology. The Daily Wire pulls the same misdirect as DeSantis, self-righteously pointing out that nowhere in the legislation is the word gay mentioned, though the word parent is mentioned 32 times, and the word parental is mentioned 7 times, in a pretty lazy attempt to make it seem as though the bill is really about parental sovereignty. They're technically not wrong in that the bill focuses a lot on a parent's right to be informed about what their kid is being taught. Except, hey there, buddy! What specifically is this sovereignty about? Does the bill say that? Oh, right. It's about sexual orientation and gender identity. This isn't a bill about a parent's general right to know what their kid is being taught. In fact, Florida already passed a bill like that last year. That bill, dubbed the Parents' Bill of Rights, allowed parents to have the right to pull their kids out of any class they deemed inappropriate, as well as have the ability to inspect any sexual education material and have access to their kids' school records. Sure seems like that law would have covered any concerns about parental sovereignty the conservatives are claiming this new law involves, doesn't it? So why introduce a second bill specific to teaching about LGBTQ issues? And if that first bill allows parents to review sex ed material and pull their kids from specific classes, why then have a new bill that gives them the rights to sue the school about one specific topic being discussed? Why can't they also sue over violent material or on religious grounds? Is it because it would be a nightmare to allow parents to sue schools for anything they teach? Not to mention that by giving one parent the ability to sue over just one topic, you're effectively blocking the sovereignty of all the other parents who want sexual orientation and gender identity explained to their kids. How is that allowing freedom for parents? It's almost as if, and this is a wild thought, I know, but it's almost as if this bill definitely isn't about parental sovereignty because Florida already has a bill specific to that. And the threat of a lawsuit clearly creates a situation where just one parent can decide for all the other parents what every kid gets to learn about. But of course, there's a second reason the GOP is giving for why they think this law is absolutely necessary. Are we ready for it? Oh boy, that is gonna look bad out of context, and I guess in context too, but that's right. P to the E to the defiles. The conservative tradition of associating queerness and homosexuality with pedophilia has a long and robust history that we don't really need to get into right now. But needless to say, Republicans, famous for refusing to update their rhetorical strategies even a little bit, are back at it again. It, in this case, being accusing LGBTQ people of being pedophiles who want to groom children. In defense of HB 1557, DeSantis' press secretary, Christina Pashaw, argued that the bill merely prevents kids from being exposed to sexually inappropriate content, accusing opponents of the bill of being either a groomer themselves or at the very least, someone who supports the grooming of 4 to 8-year-old children. Now, to start, I just want to point out that pedophilia and sexual abuse and harassment of kids, specifically in schools by teachers or employees, is a serious problem in this country. By one study, 1 out of 10 students will experience some form of sexual abuse before they hit 12th grade. That fucking sucks and is gross. Dare I say, it should not happen. But you might notice that the study I just cited is from 2004, and it turns out that this is because the United States has an alarming lack of information about this subject. We don't really have many statistics because no one has bothered to collect them on a federal level. And 2 reports by the Government Accountability Office found that the United States isn't doing nearly enough in terms of background checks or other measures to prevent child predators from working in our schools. So if you were, say, a politician who was very concerned about pedophilia and grooming, this is probably where you would actually start. You wouldn't make a bill banning sexual orientation discussions, but rather you would be loudly talking about our failure to protect kids or even track misconduct on a federal level.
Let's talk about the word grooming really quick, okay? I guarantee you that there are groomers out there, okay? Not denying the existence of people who groom children for their own personal, desires. Absolutely. I actually knew one. I saw somebody doing it. I was young. I didn't realize what I was seeing. But turns out, yeah, he was a groomer. So, yeah, they exist, right? But there's a difference between that and, let's say, a teacher that, it gets approached by a child, and the child, professes that they're gay. Let's just use this as an example. And a teacher encouraging that child, if you're gay, then I encourage you to be gay. I wouldn't consider that grooming, but that is what Ron DeSantis considers grooming. And when you support someone in being who they want to be, that's not grooming. You're not doing it for your own personal gain. You're doing it because we all should be encouraged to be what we feel like we should be. We were all taught that as children. I hope that watching crypto go up right now, just exploding. But the most important thing is that you allow someone to grow whatever and if someone's going to be gay, they should be supported in being gay, right? All right, Mom, have a good one. I'll see you when you get home. Love you. You support these people. Now, I have a cousin. I've got 2 cousins. One of them turned out to be gay, and I remember when this child was younger, and I said, oh, that one is totally gay, to my sister. And I told my mom, and they were like, no, he isn't. I go, yeah, he's going to be gay. He's going to be a gay kid, you know? And, yeah, he's gay, you know? And it's like, I would have totally encouraged if he had approached me and been like, as a maybe a role model, an older, you know, a second cousin, older, you know, someone that maybe he could confide in, came to me and said, hey man, I want to come out. What do you think? I'm like, oh, you're gay? And he's like, yeah. I'd be like, yeah, I think you should come out. Does that make me a groomer? Of course not. It makes me want that person to be happy. And if you can't see that, you're going to be one of those people that supports Ron DeSantis and becomes a Nazi with Ron DeSantis. And that is sad, and it shouldn't happen, and you should be smarter than that. Because that's not the only relative I have that's gay, you know, or might be trans, you know, might be up in the air here. We don't know. We're just being as encouraging as possible, you know? That's what you do. That's what you do with family, and that's what you should do with friends, and that's what you should do with complete strangers. And if there's a teacher that has a class, and there's a child in there, and the child is got questions and needs someone that they can talk to, because maybe their parents are cunts, like Ron DeSantis' parent, like Ron DeSantis and his wife are, like the cunts they are. Maybe their parents are like them, so they can't talk to them, and they want to talk to their teacher about it. Teachers should be able to, you know, be encouraging and not accused of being a groomer. So now you know the difference between a groomer and, you know, someone who is just encouraging someone, or someone who's encouraging a child, which is fine too. Because sometimes kids have questions, you know. Those of you that are parents, you guys understand that. And it's psychotic to me that this guy came in here earlier. This is the whole reason we're watching this video right now. And said he's got kids that are gay and he supports Ron DeSantis. He didn't even say it yet. But he said to me, are you serious? You can't be serious, or something like that.
But what we do know...
Oh, I'm serious. I'm real serious.
Oh, and again, boy, it's very little, is that a study from 1994 of 352 sexually abused kids found that the perpetrator was, at the highest, 3.1% likely to be a gay or lesbian person. 82% of the time, the abuser was a heterosexual partner of a relative of the child.
Wow, what do you know? Heterosexuals are more prone to abusing kids than homosexuals. Isn't that interesting? Huh.
Most of the victims were young girls as well, meaning that from this, albeit limited data, if we insert the information into our
what a bunch of fucking hypocrites.
Facial creation software,
what a bunch of
the average
hypocrites.
child molester from Florida would look something like this. This is all to say that there's just
Rapey
no evidence that
McForehead.
the Don't Say Gay bill would do anything at all to prevent pedophilia or grooming by teachers, nor does it seem to actually be a priority of anyone supporting the bill. It doesn't use the word grooming or pedophilia in the text, nor does it line up with any statistics, and is just focused on a ban on teachers' freedom to discuss sexual orientation and gender identity. To claim that it's a ban of sexual material is a lie, because if that was the case, wouldn't the bill say it's a ban on sexual material and not sexual orientation? You can't just claim a bill does something when it is in no way actually doing that thing. That's called a lie. There's simply no logical connection to the bill and grooming. So where the hell did this even come from? Well, that would be something called Libs of TikTok. Started as like the 4th attempt to go viral by some dipshit named Chaya Reichik. The account was signal boosted by Joe Rogan before devolving into basically an anti-LGBTQ account.
But look, these videos on Libs of TikTok are the videos that those people themselves, those psychos, put up on the internet themselves. So Hey, man, you want to shoot yourselves in the foot? This is what all these morons did. It's
literally
hilarious.
any instance of gay people existing around children.
They're crazy. Some of these fucking crazy libs are crazy. Just as crazy as any MAGA, crazy fucking Republican. They're, go take over the Capitol, fucking MAGAs, cue balls, whatever. These motherfuckers are just as crazy as the cue balls. But there's extremes in every group,
As grooming. This video of Pete Buttigieg's husband leading a pride-themed Pledge of Allegiance at an LGBTQ camp for teens.
One camp, full of pride, indivisible, with affirmation and equal rights for all.
Well, that's fucked up, though, dude. That's fucked up. Look, what they should be teaching this kid is there should be no pledge. That's what they should be teaching. But, they take the Pledge of Allegiance and then put their own LGBTQ spin on it and teach these kids that they're different than other people. You're different. This is your pledge. Wow, that's fucked up. That's fucking wrong. I wonder what Cody's going to say about this.
Apparently that's grooming. This video of a teacher...
No, it's not grooming, but I'll tell you what it is. I'm glad you showed it. It's basically abusive to those kids. If you think that you should make kids recite something to make them feel different from other kids, that's abusive. I'm sure there's another word for it. It's not grooming, but I'm sure there's another word for it.
Talking about coming out as trans to her students?
So none of the kids knew me as trans, but I wanted to talk about it. So what I did is, as soon as I came back, I joined up with the GSA, realized how many questions the kids had, and decided the best thing to do would be to host a Q&A.
Grooming again. The account made to, mock the snowflake intolerant left would openly call for any teacher who comes out to their students to be fired on the spot. Incidentally, the teacher referred to in that tweet I just showed said he came out to his students because a student asked him if he was gay because the student's parents said to the student that they thought he was gay because of his voice. So the teacher was like, "Yeah, I'm gay." Fired! Anyway, that tweet and many others have been deleted. I wonder why. But so what you'd imagine here is that any halfway reasonable person would realize that this simply isn't what grooming is. Nor is it anything but hateful to compare teachers simply coming out to their students or promoting pride to a camp specifically for gay kids to being a child predator. It's nonsense.
No.
The kind of decades-old gibberish
Look,
the Westboro...
as much as I fucking hate Pete Buttigieg, what that guy did was wrong, but not for the reasons that people are trying to paint it as grooming. It's not. And it's wrong for them to say that about him. I'll defend them on that, but, that's about it.
Baptist church would scream to nobody outside of a Comic-Con.
I defend the truth.
And coincidentally, the account was apparently a source of inspiration for none other than Christina Pushaw, DeSantis' press secretary we mentioned earlier, who has claimed that this account somehow has evidence that grooming is happening. If you define grooming as a gay person breathing near a child and evidence as being mad at ghosts online. So there you have it.
Well,
a single Twitter account promoting false news.
Cody should be more careful about what he says there. They've got some wild videos on Libs of TikTok. He should be careful about what he says there. I wouldn't defend those motherfuckers at all.
Stories and run by a viral hungry, hateful Trump supporter who, after being, big quotes, doxxed, claimed that her house was egged by posting literally the first photo that shows up when you Google house egged and then deleting it, is actually being used as the factual justification behind this entire bill. And subsequently, the completely baseless claim that it prevents grooming in any way. I can't stress this enough. None of this is about grooming. Like, it clearly is not. And yet this narrative has spun so wildly out of control that when Disney took an albeit cowardly stance against the bill, conservatives labeled them as pro-grooming along with anyone who speaks up against the bill that, I can't stress this enough, doesn't in any way have anything to do with grooming. Like, I'm sure not about to defend a multinational corporation doing the bare minimum to support LGBTQ people, but it's wild that, well, A multinational corporation doing the bare minimum to support LGBTQ people is enough for the anti-cancel culture GOP to go scorched fucking earth when they dare to publicly oppose them. And by
That show last night, huh? Crazy, what we were talking about with Dana White hitting his wife at that club or that event in Mexico. And it was all on video, and we watched that shit last night. That was a crazy show, man, wasn't it? Because I could barely tell. We were, like, whispering about it. You know, because Mom would be pissed if I wake her up.
scorched earth, I mean, relieving a corporation of billions in financial obligations and passing it on to taxpayers. That'll show them. It's gotten so bad that even other Republicans aren't safe if they even think about straying off the narrative. When Nate Hochman, a fellow for the conservative magazine National Review, pointed out on Twitter that even if teachers are indoctrinating kids with gender ideology, that's not the same thing as pedophilia, a bunch of people, including intellectual powerhouse and normal chill guy James Lindsay, immediately accused him of being a groomer. This does seem to be James's go-to response for everyone, ranging from California Representative Adam Schiff to random comedians on the internet to fucking Oreo cookies. They're just throwing out words here and hoping it sticks. A plan the GOP operative and religious think tank weirdo Christopher Rufo has flat out admitted to regarding the CRT panic, and now this. For more info on Rufo, here's a CRT episode that he apparently saw and immediately went to Twitter to block me. But anyway, again, it's just throwing stuff out and conflating a bunch of things under one fear-mongering umbrella. Or even worse, flat out admitting that they consider any mention of LGBTQ people as dangerous grooming. This would be a downright archaic view of discussing sexual orientation. At best, it's childish in that you'd be conflating the words sexuality and sexual into one concept simply because it has the word sex in it. But again, Ben Shapiro literally called Luke Skywalker an indoctrinator of sexual ideology after he simply said the word gay a bunch. It's very funny that they pretend that's not what they're concerned about while literally being openly concerned about it, you know? You can't claim the bill isn't telling teachers not to say gay and then claim that tweeting the word gay is grooming kids. That's like saying you're not scared of spiders and then shitting your pants while watching Charlotte's Web. At the end of the day, even though it is more insidious and will probably cause violence, the term groomer is basically being used as the new woke that was the new CRT that was the new SJW. It's a broad, vague term that conservatives use when they can't just flat out say what they mean, because what they mean is widely accepted as hateful when said aloud. And they know this. They know that anti-LGBTQ stances are dying. A 2021 PBS NewsHour poll found that when asked directly about whether or not trans people should have access to all the things these bills are trying to take away, 2/3 of Americans were against laws that would limit transgender rights. This wasn't just liberals either, but spread out through every ideology and age group.
That's good.
Young people are, of course, more accepting of racial and LGBTQ minorities than their parents and grandparents. And younger generations see changes to society and family structures as positives. So instead of saying anti-trans laws, they have to go with anti-groomer in the hopes of invoking irrational fears. Or, as we discussed, rational concerns dealt with irrationally. Honestly, I'm surprised they don't do this more often. I mean, they absolutely do, but not nearly as much as they could. You want to limit healthcare rights? Call it health grooming instead. Why should the government pay to have some anatomy-obsessed stranger look inside of our bodies? I'm now against that. All pediatricians are pedophiles now. Both words start the same, don't they? However, unlike most of those previous words we mentioned, groomer and pedophile are actual terms that mean something, especially to victims of sexual abuse. It is profoundly ironic that by co-opting those phrases, the people pretending to care about...
This is what I said. Groomers exist. You know, it's a thing, you know. So I'm glad he's saying this, you know. It is a thing, and it's not fair to say a teacher that's trying to encourage a kid to be what they're going to be eventually, you know, that has questions about it, is being associated in that. And like he has said over and over and over again, not the same thing. I'm glad that he's being obnoxious about it, but he's funny enough to keep you listening, you know.
Sexual abuse are actually making it harder.
It's a very
for
hard.
victims.
It's a third rail.
The same way terms
topic,
like woke
you know?
have lost all meaning, so too will these very real concepts. If you call any old person that refuses to use your experimental submarine a pedophile, then you make it so people will automatically tune out actual credible accusations of pedophilia. But again, and I really can't stress this enough, they don't actually care about pedophilia or groomers. If they did, they would perhaps be more concerned about the shocking pattern of Republican lawmakers getting in trouble for just that, including our good buddy Matt Gaetz being involved in a fucking sex trafficking
big
scandal,
forehead.
and the last GOP president of the United States openly creeping on teenage beauty queens. Also, the longest-serving Speaker of the House, former GOP representative and convicted pedophile, Dennis Hastert. I'm not using the term pedophile or groomer loosely, like conservatives are doing. These are literal cases of GOP figures getting in trouble for literal acts against minors. Oh, also, you know who else the GOP loves who famously sexually abused children? Cops! It's actually a big problem. Let me just read a few sentences out loud. A 2003 national study by the Police Professionalism Initiative written by Professor Samuel Walker at the University of Nebraska at Omaha found that 40% of reported cases of police sexual misconduct involved teens, often young women involved in youth engagement and job shadowing programs. Let's see, any more sentences to read. Ah, yes, okay. A 2010 study by the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank that tracks police wrongdoing, found that sexual misconduct by law enforcement generates more citizen complaints than any other factor except for excessive force. Surely I have more sentences. Oh, okay, yes, here we go. A database compiled by the Buffalo News reports that from 2005 to 2015,
it's 420 in Newfoundland, guys.
In a case of sexual abuse
Cheers,
or
no
misconduct
law regarding
at least
cannabis.
every 5 days. There's still a lot of
Billy
states where cops
Valentine.
can rape
Cheers,
detainees,
Josh
say it
T.
was
Cheers,
consensual,
everybody
which is
in the
literally
chat over on
impossible
Rumble.
because they're
Token Tony's
detained
eating
and
cheers.
get away with it. Oh, and follow up on that 2003 study that found 40% of reported cases of sexual misconduct by cops to involve teens. Here's a separate study from 2014 that found reported cases of sexual misconduct involving teens to be 43.1%. So I guess cops can improve. Great job to the boys in blue. Also, 15% of the victims were under 14. 8% were under 12. So, I don't know. It's just weird that we're not seeing any "don't say you're a cop" bills. Curious what that's about. None of this is subjective. These are just facts. You can agree with certain conservative policies or stances, but you can't deny that they have absolutely no fucking right to police teachers or LGBTQ people for the purposes of stopping grooming when there's zero evidence to back them up. It's just cold, hard hate-mongering. And if you really need it spelled out, look no further than the now-failed Tennessee proposal that attempted to create an alternate pathway to legal marriage that would not be available to same-sex couples. First of all, petty, spiteful bill, which did crash and burn, but not before people pointed out that they had included absolutely no age limit to who could get hitched, opening the door to literal child marriages. They went on to amend the bill to fix that, but this so perfectly points out how little the GOP actually cares about pedophilia or grooming, and in fact, just wants to take away the rights of gay people. In writing this bill, they were either so focused on taking away these rights, or just didn't care, that they were ready to accept child brides so long as those child marriages weren't same-sex. Point is, this is all the exact opposite of everything they claim to care about, and should be rejected and mocked by anyone who isn't actively trying to attack the LGBTQ community, right? Like, you don't even have to be an advocate. If you think that everyone should have equal rights and that pedophilia is bad, you have no good reason to be supporting the majority of the Republican Party. You should also be absolutely in awe that we're still dealing with this stuff today, because, like, it is 2022, so how the are we still having this conversation? Didn't we federally legalize gay marriage 7 years ago, to which the world did not end? So why, dear sexy Christ who fucks frogs, are the GOP still trying to limit the rights of LGBTQ people? We're going to talk about just that, in detail, after a few ads. Because ads are just, they're so great. You know, I love it when I'm really worked up about something important and have to stop everything to tell you about a fucking smart hairbrush or whatever.
You know, for years now.
Stopped everything to tell you about a lentil delivery service that sends you farm fresh lentils straight to your door. Hold on. Start a business, mail order, send farm fresh lentils straight to your door. Perfect. Oh, it's gonna be so good. Okay, so we were just finished pointing out that nothing in the recent GOP push against LGBTQ people has any logical standing. Next, we have to ask, why is this happening now? What is the Republicans' end game? What can we do about it? Can we do anything about it? And why, sweet horse god, why is it always DeSantis and Abbott? Why these two sopping dildos? Sopping dildos implies they did a good job, so that's too polite. They're more like dusty attic dildos from the 40s that your grandmother tried once but got electrocuted by. You know, the one you found as a kid and used as a lightsaber until your mother intervened? Not pulling from real life or anything, just an imaginative tale about how whenever I watch Star Wars, I think about how sex is evil. I'm fine. It was fine. But that last question, why these two bad dildos, is very easy to answer, and begins to explain why these laws seem so broken. Simply put, thanks to Trump, bigotry is pretty popular right now. It's as big as the hit film Jupiter Ascending. We've talked before at length about how the nascent proto-fascism that was the Trump presidency drew a line in the sand for the conservative movement, and how many Republicans, DeSantis in particular, have realized that the old traditional conservative way of doing things won't cut it anymore. Someone needs to step up and be the new Trump. And since Trump is figuratively and literally melting at the moment, DeSantis is currently in the lead for that position. Similarly, Abbott has been struggling with his popularity among this base of the GOP. And so there's just no easier way to gain points than by beating the dead horse of woke politics. They certainly aren't the only people doing this, but rather the most vocally desperate at the moment. You could argue that this explains why these laws seem so hastily written and legally incoherent, in that the people making them don't actually care what the law says. But it's not that simple. As we mentioned, the Don't Say Gay bill appears to have different wording in its preamble than the actual law, and is extremely vague about the actual age groups affected. This makes it so that, depending on the courtroom and lawyers involved, you could actually get different interpretations of the bill. And this is actually the same for a lot of these half-assed laws being introduced. They're often incredibly inconsistent, and that's possibly because conservatives don't even really understand transness well enough to effectively legislate against it.
Exactly.
Why, for example, is it legal for doctors to treat kids with human growth hormone to alter their bodies, but a crime for doctors to treat trans kids with estrogen or testosterone? How do these laws affect intersex people or people with hormone imbalances? Are puberty blockers still allowed to treat non-trans children for things like precocious puberty? Where do we draw any of these seemingly arbitrary lines? While it's pretty clear that these lawmakers don't understand the actual science, there are likely other extremely old factors at play. Writing for Slate, law professor Courtney Cahill draws parallels between the current-day attempt to define gender along biological lines and the Jim Crow-era practice of doing the exact same thing, but with race. Cahill looks at Bill HB 935, a piece of anti-trans legislation out of Florida that, while it eventually died in 2021, would have made it a crime for healthcare providers to surgically change the sex of minors. Cahill points out that by defining sex as the biological state of being female or male based on sex organs, chromosomes, and endogenous hormone profiles, and then implicitly defining breasts as a female sex organ by listing a mastectomy as a prohibited act when performed on a minor, HB 935 would have legally made having breasts an essential part of the biological state of being female. Except it wouldn't, obviously. As Cahill says, a cisgender Floridian woman would still be a woman even were she to not have breasts, and gaining breasts through hormones or surgery isn't enough for a trans woman to be legally considered a woman. That requires a legal sex change, which requires a note from your healthcare provider. It's the kind of pulling out the rug trick you can play on conservatives over and over again without them even ever coming up with a satisfactory response. Oh, womanhood is defined by being able to give birth? Are infertile cis women no longer women? Of course not. Oh, womanhood is defined by having a certain amount of testosterone in your blood. What about cis athletes with naturally high T counts? Are they no longer women? Still no? Gee, sure seems like this biological system is just an ad hoc way to exclude trans people. Huh. Cahill ties us back to Jim Crow, and to similar attempts from the era to define race via various biological truths, which of course didn't work even a little bit because, as Cahill says, in practice, race regulation showed that legal race wasn't based on biological truths and wasn't absolute. The legal definition of race varied between states. Someone could be colored in Louisiana and white somewhere else. The legal definition of race also varied within states. The same person could be both colored and white depending on the official charged with making that assessment. Jim Crow eventually fell apart under the weight of all of its inconsistencies, and so too, Cahill says, will states' power to legally define sex as a binary between male and female. It's only a matter of time before all of the glaring problems with these bills finally start to cause problems for the conservatives passing them. And thanks to how loosely worded a lot of these laws are, they could easily be used for any purpose, because it's not just how they define sex, but any attempt to turn subjective moral stances into absolutes. In Arizona, for example, they're pushing through a law aimed at limiting sexual content in school library books. It would give parents the right to demand a book get pulled lest the librarian be fired and barred from working in a public school. The original law specifically targeted books that promote the study of sex, sexual preferences, sexual activity, sexual perversion, sex-based classifications, sexual identity, or gender identity. But after scrutiny, a lot of that was eliminated, leaving the official wording of the law to be, quote, "No public school district, public charter school, or public school library shall maintain in its inventory or promote books that make as their primary subject the study of sex, sexual lifestyles, or sexual activity, or books that are of a controversial nature that a reasonable parent or legal guardian would want to know of or approve of prior to their child being exposed to it." And like, what does that even mean? What books have a primary subject being sexual lifestyles? Does study of sex mean no sex education books? And how do you define what a reasonable parent is and what they'd want to know about these books? It's very clear they were trying to ban books that feature LGBTQ stories, but this new law can be so loosely interpreted so that you could oppose pretty much any book with a romantic storyline. Or rather, it doesn't ban any book if you're targeting books that are primarily about sexual activity. Like, wouldn't that just ban erotic novels, something that isn't in a school to begin with? At least not the cool ones, of course. It comes down to this, I think. Let's say you have a story about a person asleep who needs to be kissed by a prince in order to break a spell and wake up. If that person is a woman, then that kiss is not sexual. However, if the person is a man and the prince kisses that man, then it is instantly sexual to these people. The existence of gay people automatically makes them think about sexual activity. That's what happens in their little brains, and it's one reason why it's impossible to talk to them about this. Others being they're bigots and liars, but whatever. This is all not to mention that legislating what someone is allowed to learn about or do with their own bodies flies directly in the face of the small government anti-cancel culture narrative Republicans have been attempting to weave for the past many decades. But of course, that's not a new contradiction. The hypocrisy is almost not even worth mentioning. Republicans have always wanted to have their cake and not sell it to a gay couple too. They want Uncle Sam to f*** off and leave everyone alone until it comes to all the things they absolutely want the federal government to dictate, like reproductive rights and marriage equality and, you know, sexy, erotic books about vas deferens and all the goop that lives inside of us. Of course, by hiding behind pedophilia, they can at least try and mask this by wrapping their dry little hate turd in a tortilla of think of the children. And again, this is not a new strategy by any means. In the 1970s and 1980s, right-wing religious figures depicted gay men as depraved predators who groomed or recruited children, and similar rhetoric appeared again in the mid-2000s as Democrats and Republicans alike fought against legalizing gay marriage, something that a lot of politicians and pundits are definitely still against, but have to pretend like they aren't.
Right.
What I mean is that despite how they tiptoe around it, people like Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott and most of the GOP would happily move us back to a time where LGBTQ people had zero rights. It's why, when asked point blank, they often give answers like this.
I don't want any discrimination in Florida. I want people to be able to, live their life, whether you're gay, but also whether you're religious. And I think you should be able to do that. And I don't want them discriminated against as well. So, we're going to have, we got a big diverse state, and that's just the way it is.
Oh yeah, do I think gay people should have rights and be protected? I mean, I think all things should be protected. All words are good, really. And letters that are in the words, like, did you think about religious people? That's also a word. So to directly answer your question, I think religious people deserve rights. Meanwhile, his actual actions, such as leaving LGBTQ people off of anti-discrimination laws, speak much louder than fumbled words. But they can't just say it anymore. Just like when Ben Shapiro has to claim he's not against gay marriage, but the government getting involved in all marriage.
I think the government ought to be completely out of the business of marriage. I think the government sucks at everything, is my short message for today. The government is terrible at everything. If the government's goal was to forward traditional marriage, it utterly failed. Obviously, as proved.
But you don't mind it being out of the business of traditional marriage at all?
No,
right?
I think the government should be out of all marriage.
Ah, yes, all marriage matters or something. Ben is totally cool with gay people, except coincidentally whenever the government gets involved with granting them equal rights, and also when someone tweets the word gay, apparently. And I guess what I'm getting at here is that Courtney Cahill's assessment that these laws are similar to Jim Crow laws is pretty apt. I mean, obviously there are many historical differences, and I'm not going to compare them one to one, but the Jim Crow era began roughly 10 years after slavery was abolished, and the laws were enacted mainly in southern states. In retrospect, they really seem like a last-ditch attempt to maintain the power dynamics of slavery, labeling non-white individuals as second class and proclaiming honky superiority. I can't stress enough that racial segregation and history can't really be compared to LGBTQ rights, but you can't help but see the similarity. The GOP lost when it came to same-sex marriage.
Big drop on crypto right now.
They lost like losers. Only 4 Republicans voted in favor of it, and 3 of them were immediately voted out for doing so. And now, almost 10 years later, this same party is clearly trying to find ways for individual states to pass laws that bring them back to an era where LGBTQ people didn't have so many pesky rights. They don't care if the laws make sense or can be easily defeated in courts. What matters is that they keep that ball in the air for as long as possible, delay this obvious progress in the hopes that they can keep their own superiority intact. They're just prolonging their existence at the expense of others, like vampires, or more commonly known, Balaam Abrasax from the hit film Jupiter Ascending. And just like Jim Crow laws and the runtime of Cloud Atlas, this could last way longer than it has any right to. Because ultimately, these conservatives just don't like gay people. But no, they can't say that. That's why these laws are so weird and vague and nonsensical, because they're all trying to find loopholes around blatantly stating their prejudice. And for that reason, and just like Jim Crow laws, these anti-LGBTQ laws will ultimately fall apart. I mentioned this run of laws aimed at allowing medical professionals to deny care based on their conscience. As one South Carolina bill states, no medical practitioner, healthcare institution, or healthcare payer should be compelled to participate in or pay for any medical procedure or prescribe or pay for any medication to which the practitioner or entity objects on the basis of conscience, whether such conscience is informed by religious, moral, ethical, or philosophical beliefs or principles. That bill also protects those practitioners from legal repercussions for discrimination. And while this is clearly aimed at trans people, they aren't allowed to just flat out say that. And so because of the extremely vague wording, it could be used to discriminate against literally anyone based on philosophical beliefs. By that definition, a vegetarian doctor could legally choose to not treat you because you're wearing a leather jacket. Hell, they could not treat you for liking the band Stained, which frankly should come with a penalty, but not from doctors.
Yeah, he's crazy.
It is hard to fully appreciate the fact that, when you get down to it, this proposed law is basically saying to doctors, do no harm unless they bother you. It is so broadly defined so as to be both ineffective and legally explosive, and if enforced, could gunk up the system so bad that it ultimately gets thrown out, along with all the other laws trying to do this. Of course, I do want to be very clear here. These laws are bad, cruel, harmful laws that in the immediate short term will absolutely have a negative impact on the LGBTQ people, primarily children being affected by them. Trans people in the US already face incredibly high barriers of entry to the basic possibility of participating in public life. They're banned from equal education, targeted by state departments, prevented from receiving life-saving medical care, harassed in bathrooms no matter which one they use. The list goes on. We didn't even mention all of the recent attempts to ban trans athletes, which could fill an entirely separate episode. Not only are these things bad on their own, but they have the added effect of preventing trans people from entering the formal labor market, let alone acquiring the huge expense of medical transition, assuming they survive that long, considering how often they get f***ing murdered or take their own lives. The current legislative pushes aim to permanently confine queer people, especially trans people, to the informal economy, and in some states actively criminalize their existence. Fire the teacher for saying he's gay? They want people to be afraid to exist, is what they want. If the push succeeds, if these bills pass in any widespread way, the state will have effectively declared itself cisgender and heterosexual for the first time, in the same way that under Jim Crow it declared itself white. These laws frame themselves as making moral arguments about the validity of trans existence, and they are doing that, but they're not only doing that. Gender-affirming care, for example, is not only moralized as self-mutilation and or child abuse, it's also framed as prohibitively expensive and as a luxury. A cosmetic procedure in the same category as lip fillers, or an expensive dye job, or getting metal teeth so you can bite open beer cans. It's not a coincidence that the defunding of reproductive health, the banning of abortion, and the goal of banning contraception are all tied up in the political and legal strategy of anti-trans policies. By relegating all trans-adjacent healthcare to the private sector, and then relegating trans people to lower, second-class citizens, the state can effectively prohibit transness altogether without having to put it into law. And that is a scary, terrible thing. However, the light at the end of this very long, dark tunnel is this. History will look back on this treatment of trans people in the same way we look back on the Jim Crow era today, with disgust, shame, and the lingering feeling that if you'd paid slightly better attention during 11th grade history, you might be able to know what's going on more often. The conservatives are fighting a losing battle, and it's the exact same losing battle they've been fighting every 30 years for the past 150 years. This is possibly the fatal flaw with conservatism as an ideology altogether. Despite what the hit film Cloud Atlas might tell you, time moves forward whether we like it or not, and we move right along with it, whether you like it or not. Progressivism, making progress, feels intuitive and natural because we really have no other option other than to move with the current. And to try to do anything else means not only standing still, but pushing back against the flow and attempting to reverse the tide. Because that's where the conservative side of things takes us, in the end. Do you think, seriously, that people like James Lindsay and Ben Shapiro and Ronald DeSantis want to stop at just these anti-trans laws? Or perhaps will they keep pushing us backward little by little? But again, people like them have been fighting the same fight over and over again with different goalposts because they keep losing. Before this, they lost the fight for gay marriage. And before that, they lost the civil rights movement. And before that, they lost to the suffragist movement. And before that, they lost the fucking Civil War. It's all the same fight, and we're already seeing with the Don't Say Gay bill and the recent resurgence of conflating queerness and pedophilia that if they win the fight against trans people, they'll immediately push back towards their next battleground. And so on until every minority group has been stripped of their rights and America is great again. It's like an incredibly high-stakes game of Team Fortress 2, except instead of fighting for glowing checkpoints, you're fighting for the basic human rights of marginalized people. Don't know, haven't played it. The point I'm trying to make here is that if the last century of American history can serve as any kind of precedent, the conservatives will lose this fight eventually. That said, how fast they lose depends on us, and how hard we fight against them, and point out what obviously lying liars they are. And of course, saying we'll win eventually doesn't do shit for the kids who are right this moment being targeted by laws either currently or about to be on the books. So, on the screen, there should be a bunch of different links to organizations dedicated to helping trans and LGBTQ youth, and all those links will be somewhere in the description as well. So you can click on them, and then be taken to their website, and then give them money in the form of a donation. In fact, right this second, the Wachowski sisters are running an auction where all of the proceeds go to the Defend Trans Youth Fund. That auction is for various props from their beloved films such as Cloud Atlas and Jupiter Ascending, which are really popular and cool films. Don't believe me? How many times have you heard those films brought up in just the last hour? Everyone's talking about them. And so right this second, you can get the actual ears worn by Kane Wise, the half-dog man, and also help trans youth. That's a win-win, assuming you get it before we use our show budget to swipe that up. And to sweeten the deal, if every single person subscribed to Some More News on YouTube donates at least $1 to a trans charity of your choice, I, Cody F. Johnston, will purchase and eat those rubber ears. That's a Some More News promise, so you know it's real. Or maybe I won't do that. I don't know. Is my name even Cody? Maybe not, and I probably won't eat those ears. But I'm still gonna try to get those stupid man-dog ears. Or maybe this sweet whatever that is from Cloud Atlas. And you should still donate to, like, not be a jerk. And if you know a trans teen personally, do the right thing and just, you know, leave them alone. Because, like all teens, they probably just want to be left the f*** alone. Or cigarettes. Give them cigarettes. Teens love that. I am being told that I can't advise people to give cigarettes to teens because of laws or something. But as we've just pointed out, laws can be bad, so do what you want with that. like all teens, they probably just want to be left the f alone. Or cigarettes. Give them cigarettes. Teens love that. I am being told that I can't advise people to give cigarettes to teens because of laws or something.
That's pretty good. Big drop in the market. If you're looking at the prices here. Solana is doing great though. So is Luna, FTM, VRA, Merit Circle, Atom, XTZ, Synthetics. Those all look pretty good. But that's a big, big drop across the board. So if you're looking for a purchase point, I would say this would probably be a time to consider 655. 16, oh, it's going down. Maybe. 16,650. The 24-hour low is 636. So there it's 649. It's going down. So if you're looking to purchase Bitcoin, man, be watching it because this is looking good. It's good timing right now. Alright, you guys, love y'all. Thanks for watching. I will see you on the next show this afternoon sometime. Turn on your notifications. And I will see you, I'll see you later. Love y'all. Bye. Oh, I'm at Nave's Garden on Twitter. Come on over to Twitter. I'll see you over there. Bye.